We already have a few tracks in here waiting for us to review. Hopefully everything is good. I'll wait a few seconds for people to join and spam hello and stuff like that. See if the microphone and all of that stuff is set up properly. I need to route to my headphones. I think I already had this last stream, but I'm using a new virtual mixer, which is massive, as you can see. I just need it because I need 3 virtual audio tracks, technically, for all of the things that I do, all of the different setups that I need. And the other virtual mixer that I used before only had 2 of them. So this is a massive audio mixer, and you can see that I'm not really using any of this. I have all of my programs going through one of them. It says Discord on all 3, but that isn't technically right. The only program that goes through a different one is Reaper and Ableton, so that is going into DAWs over here. So this would be like the DAW track, and this would be all of the other stuff. So for everything except the extra virtual output, I could have used the other one, but now I upgraded to this version over here. I think it is the way that it works is that it's like a month-long trial for this version, and then I have to pay for it. But I'll just buy it because I need this. One of the things that was really annoying is that between recordings and Zoom sessions with students, I would have, how should I say, like I would have a different setup, I guess. And whenever I would record something like, say, the microphone, it would take the microphone and then the desktop audio, and it would record that both in one track, which is really annoying in the edit. And essentially all the time I would have to re-record videos because of that. So hopefully this is a little bit of an upgrade to my workflow in that regard, in that I no longer have to do that. I don't mind be. Welcome to the stream. Let's see if the other people are joining as well. I see some people coming in, so that's nice. I'll give it a little bit more time before we start the first feedback. But for those that still want to publish music, you can of course do that. Make sure to always read the rules when it comes to the music over here. You can see that you grant me permission to play your video on the live stream and the subsequent video on YouTube. So this is copyright stuff. That means that you're not allowed to claim the copyright over here. And then don't submit any works to which you don't fully own the copyright to. This means any remix, bootleg, or edit will not be played. That is the second rule. And then the third rule, this is more of like a preference in that I don't want to use something like retransfer, where I have to download the file first before I can actually play it on stream. I just want to be able to play it through here. But yeah, you guys can just post your stuff in here as long as it abides by the rules, and then we'll have a listen to it once we get to there. Of course, patrons get early access, and that means that or early access, they get to skip the queue, essentially. That means that any red name over here gets to skip the queue, so any Patreon that submits gets to immediately be like the next in line. I guess if I'm already playing a track, I'm not going to stop a track and then go to the other one, of course. Is there something else that I want to say? There was one more thing. Oh yeah. I'm thinking of retiring the Patreon. I'm still molding this over. I'm thinking of retiring the Patreon and going to the YouTube membership system as opposed to the Patreon membership system. Because I think all of the features that I initially wanted from the membership are now actually implemented, like early access to videos, the integration with Discord. But you can imagine that that is a big hassle, and I would need to think it over. So that is something that maybe in the next few months I'll finally make a decision on, and then I'll inform everybody and get them to switch over if they want to continue supporting me. It is a lot of people that are on Patreon might not continue supporting because maybe they are forgotten that they have that subscription, right? So I don't know, maybe I'll keep both even. I used to run both, but I would like to have it, if I possibly can, only on the YouTube side. That way what I can do is I can upload a video once, and then that video can also become public. And now what I essentially do is I upload the Patreon version of the videos, and I upload the non-Patreon version of the video separately. So all of my videos that I'm publishing show up twice in my YouTube studio and everywhere for me, which is a little bit annoying, but not too big of a deal. It just takes me more time to upload things. It can also be the case that getting fiber in the next apartment will solve that problem for me as well, in that it just takes no time to upload anything, so then it's not that big of an issue. Nowadays, what I do is I just leave stuff uploading overnight, and then that uploads the Patreon video, and then during the morning, when I'm editing all of the descriptions and all of that stuff, I'll also let the other videos upload. So the public version upload, and then I can just transfer the information between the two descriptions, between the two titles. I can both give them the thumbnails and stuff like that. And then the Patreon goes onto the Patreon, and the public ones get scheduled for when they need to release. Anyway, Nabupsai, welcome. Good vibes, how are you doing? Nice to see you here. I guess we're going to get started here. We have Waldeck here with Dimension Shift. Isn't Dimension spelled with just one M? Yes. Dimension is spelled with one M, not two M's. You might want to change that. It looks a little bit strange to have grammatical errors in there. But let's get into it. I hope everything is okay in terms of audio, in terms of balance. This is set at full volume now. I like the phaser and then the transgate on top of that, sounds really nice. It could be more stereo, that effect though. Not really a fan of the bass line here. Also, the kick sounds a little bit strange. Overall, I would say it's not the best kick and bass I've heard. Present, welcome, how are you doing? I like the sound design, all of the sequences and synths that you're doing. Nice switch up here. Another thing that I'm hearing is the snares a bit on the long side. I would personally make that shorter. A lot of the elements in this track are very, very mono. Like this main sequence over here that we're hearing now as well. But also the bass line could use a little bit of stereo wave. I always like to add a little bit of stereo wave to that. Not really a fan of this part over here. It doesn't really sound psytrancey. Sounds a bit more EDM-y, I would say. But maybe that's the style that you're going for. That person, welcome. Bit of a strange place for a fill there. Normally, when you're going into a breakdown, you want to like lower it a little bit in terms of the energy, and now it's like there's this big fill, and then nothing happens. That's a bit of a strange decision. Now we can check at least the cleanliness here. It is looking nice and clean, so I like that. I just don't like the tonality of the bass line. And the kick has a bit of a strange like knock to it, which I'm not really a fan of. Maybe it sounds like the punch is a little bit too high. It doesn't go down fast enough, like this part is too long. It sounds like choo, 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 as opposed to like a real strong punch to it. And then the bass line doesn't really have a transient. It just goes like it has the growl, the mid-range of a bass line, but it doesn't really have the click. Mukahit Tozal. I'm sorry for mispronouncing that, but welcome to the stream. Yeah, definitely needs some extra work on the details. I would definitely try to improve it a little bit more. Also try to fix the spelling error in the title. That is looking a little bit strange. But the next track is gonna be Nabu here. Hey there. Here's one of my tracks for today's stream. Oh wait, I need to see if there's more tracks. Is it okay if you can ask you guys just to post tracks in here, like not chatting or stuff like that? Like this is the submission stream, or the submission channel. If you want to chat, there's a YouTube chat here that you can use for that. That is also where I get to see the chat and stuff like anything that I need to see. I saw something over here earlier. I know you always ask, it's pronounced that person. I'm using the letter Thor, which looks like this. Aha. Okay, so I did mispronounce your name earlier when I said hello to you. But this is the reason why you should write it in the YouTube chat, because here I just don't see these kind of things. Unless I'm specifically looking through it. Like this is not a chat, this is a submission area. So if we can please keep it down here with just submitting tracks and adding the little whatever you want to talk about to it. Like this is of course okay if you want to send me a little message with your track, but don't go in here chatting and stuff like that. That is really not necessary. Hey there, here's one of my tracks for today's stream. It's not finished, no intro, boring percussions and fill, etc. But the idea is there. I'm mostly interested in the technical / mixing side of things. Thanks in advance for the feedback and keep it up with your videos. You're doing great. Thank you. It's okay, I will. Thank you. Synthetics, Greedo, FOP, welcome. When it comes to the mixing side of things, when the track is not finished, I can give you pointers for the mix, but the final mix is going to come when the track is finished. So talking too much about the mixing side doesn't really make a lot of sense, because you can only make mixing decisions when you have the finished track, because mixing decisions depend on the context of the track, of course. Like mixing is combining all elements into one, so you would need to have all elements in the track in order to do that. But anyway, this is Oriental Psytrance 26.05.wav. Play anyway. Yeah, no intro. We're just getting straight into it. Kick and bass is bleeding into, mainly the kick it's bleeding into. I think also the bass notes are bleeding into it a little bit, so you would need to resample your kick and bass. I like the single melody here. I don't think I like the extra melody under it. What I would probably try to do is add atmospheres under it, because it does feel a little bit empty now. A few extra drop drums at this point would be nice. That's a little bit of a strange way to introduce a riser. That's very loud. It just completely takes over the musical idea. At this point, if you're switching into new elements, I would completely remove this melodic segment over here. Very loud synths. The drums come in all of a sudden. I would have done that much earlier on in the track. It is a very strange contrast. Now you have this really strong sequence, this really strong synth, and then these tiny little bells on top of it, which has been, first of all, playing for way too long. And secondly, you have this very aggressive, very high energy part of the track, and then these very tiny bells on top of it is just a very strange contrast. I would just, as I said, I would have removed them in the last segment, and I would also remove them in this segment. They don't really add anything, they make the track more boring because we've been listening to them for so long. There's not a lot of change throughout this track, which means that it's becoming a little bit boring. We are now almost 5 minutes in and it feels like we're just going through one idea, especially because there is no intro to this. Like for 5 minutes I would have gone through maybe 2-3 different ideas where you just build up to a certain high point with a certain energy, and then you cut out all of the synths and then go into a new set of synths that do like a different musical idea. This is just the same stuff over and over again. I don't know if I like the key changes. It's definitely unique, but I would probably stick with the normal bass melody that you have over here. Also because the rest of the track doesn't change key. Strange 4 bars of kick and bass there, and then for the rest there's just kick. I like the squelches in here, but you're going back into the synth that we've been listening to for the last 3 minutes, which means that again this section is really boring. sounding, because it's just the same thing that we've been listening to for a long while now. Sweep, welcome. Julius Sieben, welcome to the stream as well. I hope the bot is waking up. But here you should find a link to my Discord. There we are. Do make sure to read the rules before posting in the feedback on stream over here. That is of course important. I like this kind of like vowly sound that you have going on here. I do wonder how long your segments are of the like each individual idea, because it feels like they're 32 bars long, which is very long, like between the fills. Also, we have been listening to this for 7 minutes straight without any other fill other than like a bar here or there, no breakdown, nothing like that. Sorry if this is going to sound a little bit harsh, but this track is trying to do everything in its power to like stay as still as possible by just continuously playing the kick and bass, continuously playing the same length of segment, continuously playing the same type of fill. Continuously playing the same riser as well. You did that for a while. Using elements for a very, very long time. I feel like you have one drum loop and there's not like variations between drum loops. It just kind of rose up. At some point the drum loop started playing and now it has been playing for this whole time as well. Do you open multiple pages on the signalizer, or is it a preset you have to be able to view it like that for the tracks? There's actually 4 signalizers. So there's another signalizer here and here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And yes, all of them are different presets. I have dropped this analyzers preset in my Discord. So if you search analyzers in my Discord, then you will be able to find this. For me it says unable to accept invitation. The invitation code is not valid anymore, or something. I don't understand why. That's strange. Does it still... I mean, most people are already in the Discord, so I cannot really check that. Unless I maybe go incognito here and check the link myself. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. Invite. Discord app launched. Yeah, it's just working for me. I don't know why that would be the case. This is the link. I can post it again in the chat, but it's the same link as it was before, and that's just working. Yeah, Nabubsai, it's really hard to make judgments on stuff like the mix. Like the mix is a little bit all over the place in the sense that the synths are a little bit too loud, the percussions are a little bit too quiet. But that's not the big problem of this track. And you can only really make those final judgments anyway when the track is finished. Like, it doesn't really make sense to start talking about the mix of the track and the technical aspects of the track. Although you should clean your kick and bass, of course. Resampling and all of that stuff. And the reason why it doesn't really make sense to talk about it is because, like, from a musical idea, I would argue that it's just not there yet. So that's the thing that you should probably focus on first, that you should try to get right first, and then you're looking at the technical aspects. Like, now that I've written the things that I want to write, how do I actually make sure that it's all mixed properly and that kind of stuff? Yes, don't worry, mate. I'll figure it out for next time. Thanks anyway. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know what else I can do for you. the link is working on my end. So if somebody else is not yet in the Discord, maybe they can check if they have the same issue. There should also be a Discord link under the stream, but again, that's probably going to be the same link. Yeah, that's going to be the same invite. That's the same link. I use the same link everywhere. And it has worked like thousands of times, at least, I guess, for the other people and stuff like that. From what I can tell, it's maybe worked like 1,000 times in Bitly. I don't have the Bitly thing open, but it has like the dashboard where I can see how much it works. So it should just work. Maybe try clearing your cache in like your web browser or something like that, or cookies or whatever you need to do. Maybe there's like something like that interfering, or just restarting your PC. Maybe that works. I don't know. Next up, we have I wasn't brave and it was not following the link to open. Ah, okay, so now it works. Perfect. Okay, so next up we have that person. This time I tried to pronounce it right. Hopefully I did. Still needs vocals for the rest of the parts though. Isabella's Anthem. This sounds very interesting. Last time your music was also very, very interesting. Maybe it's the same thing. It does sound very similar. I feel like I've heard this before. I do remember this from last time. It's sounding really cool still. I think I'm not a fan again of the kick. I think I said it last time as well. In the sense that the kick doesn't really punch through. And it feels like you're trying to do like a little bit more of an aggressive part here. So here I would just go for like a very aggressive kick. Not something like a hardstyle kick or something like that. That's too much. But definitely like an electronic kick that just has like an impact that you can feel in your body, and now it just feels like the kick just kind of just like ploop. It doesn't really hit you. You You know what I mean? Because you have all of these digital soundscapes and that kind of stuff going on here. This is a little bit on the full side, especially if you want to do vocals in here. Like the vocals really need their space to sit in the track. What I would maybe do over here is remove that like vocal stab that is playing every bar. Maybe you can bring it back over here once you have that effect playing. Once upon a time it was the middle of a story. Here again it sounds too full. It's really hard to understand what the vocals are actually trying to tell us. I would probably lower this feedback loop when the piano thing that just played comes in. Or whatever that was. So that it kind of overtakes it. Now starts to sound a little bit annoying. Because it's like a distorted feedback thing that you have going on here. I would take these strings or choir or whatever is now also playing and have those sit on top. Yeah, so now you're changing keys, now you're doing like harmonies, and it's still mainly the feedback that is kind of overtaking the actual harmony that should, in my opinion, be the main element at this point. Like at this point, the feedback should probably just be completely quiet.
Everybody, welcome to the beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end.
Here again, the kick is not really providing any power, and since this is doing like 4 on the floor, I would really have hope to get some actual power out of it. You cannot even see any like kick punch in here, which is usually like swooping down through the frequency spectrum. It just looks like a little stab of some lower frequencies comes in here, but no actual punch is generated. This is where Sooth might be handy. To be honest, you can just lower it, because it's only resonance, that feedback part. So you can just lower its volume. You don't need Sooth for any of that.
Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. No matter what you think, I still think you're a 10. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. What's love is our friends. Yeah, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. I'm gonna have to start wrapping up the song because beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. I'm starting to run out of time on the first one. Beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end, beginning of the end. Getting memories, deja vu.
Also for the bass line over here, some sidechain pumping would be nice.
Beginning of the end, beginning
Same is kind of true for the chords. That way it gives the kick also more power. If this is the same track, then it's kind of messy in my opinion. Yeah, maybe, but this is like this thing that you're going to get from experimental stuff, is that it constantly changes and that it constantly evolves. So that was baked in. I mean, the feedback loop that you're hearing is just one track, so you just turn that down in volume. Soothe really isn't necessary in this situation, I would say. I try to stay away from it as much as possible. And here you can just lower the volume of the whole thing, as opposed to just the resonance of that thing, because all it is a feedback loop, which by definition generates resonances. Right, it's that distorted resonance that we hear that is specifically coming from the feedback. At least it sounds like that was generated in some kind of way with the feedback in there. It might not be, but then it has at least that feeling. And I would just lower that element in volume at some point, which is just like a basic mixing thing, right? When it comes to Soothe, I don't think people know how careful you need to be with a tool like that. Like, I barely find myself using, like very, very rarely find myself using dynamic or spectral dynamic processing, which is what Soothe does. Of course, I don't use Soothe itself. I use a different plugin, which does the same thing. Spectral Dynamics. Do I have that in here? Did I never add that to my list? Or is it... I mean, it should be in here. Spectral Dynamics here. So this is basically what Soothe does. It just looks different in that you get like a certain threshold, and anything that exceeds that threshold, you get to compress that on a spectral basis. Which is what Soothe essentially does. Or that is exactly what Soothe does. I have a little bit more control over the actual compression that is being used here. But these things, they can cause very nasty artifacts, for one. And two, when it comes to resonance suppression, what essentially happens is you're removing character. Because at the end of the day, the difference between harmonics in volume is what gives you the character of the sound. That is what gives you the texture, the timbre of the sound. And by removing it so like precisely, because this can take one single harmonic, which is too high, and lower that, or it can take like only the higher harmonic, or only the harmonics that, as I said, exceed this threshold, and lower those. So you can essentially set up a setting where it takes all of the harmonics that are higher than this processor, and then which essentially are all of them, and it compresses all of them to the same point, which means that you're losing essentially all of the texture of the sound. Right? All of the unique character of the sound is lost just by virtue of you compressing it too much. And I hear this all the time. I hear this in other people's live streams as well, where they take a sound that has a very nice character to it, and then they add Soothe on top of it, and it just loses everything. It just completely dies. And then they do that for the sake of, oh, then it's easier to mix. But at the end of the day, like, we didn't need Soothe 20 years ago. So why would we really need it now? Soothe can easily take the life/character out of sound. Yeah, you have to be really careful with this kind of stuff. And it's not like a Soothe only problem. That is just what Spectral Dynamics does. Because it's so precise on what it targets and how it lowers individual volumes and stuff like that, it's really easy to slightly overdo it and just lose all of the character of a sound. really, when it comes to my mixes, I use spectral dynamics maybe once every 3 mixes. That is how little I actually have a need for that. And I see people that just throw Sooth on everything by default, which is a terrible idea. You just lose all of the character of your sounds. Anyway, next up we have Muka Hitozal. I'm really sorry for the mispronunciation there, but I'll give you feedback either way. Sometimes some links don't show up the little preview here. Like most links show up a preview. This is a YouTube link, but also SoundCloud links, of course, do that. Right? This one and this one. But every once in a while you get a link that looks like this where there's no preview whatsoever. I wonder why that is. Anyway, this is 20.06.2023-final by Jakmoer van Daar. I'm sorry for the mispronunciation. It's not a magic bad sound fixer, exactly. And some people treat it as such. We have some quality sound design going on over here. Quality soundscaping.
Doesn't mean it's not there.
Kick and bass definitely needs cleaning up. As you can see, we're bleeding into the kick drum over here, we're bleeding into the bass line, we're bleeding into this bass line as well. Also not really a fan of the sound of the transient, it sounds like very knocky. The bass line also has like a notch to it,
It's beyond the full functioning of the mind.
which sounds a little bit odd. Also, what I wanted to say, the kick and bass doesn't really have an impact because in the intro you also already play the kick and bass at the same volume. Take for the intro that part of the kick and bass where it's filtered and just lower it by 5 dB. Very loud lower harmonic there. You probably don't want that because it's going to collide with your kick and bass. This is a very long segment without any form of fill, without like really a lot happening. Like the sound design is cool, but at some point you wish that there was like a build up and then it would stop, which is what is happening here. I would have hoped that this would have played earlier, but this is like an actual breakdown, I guess, or not? No. Bit of a strange structure. In the sense that you have like one very long segment and then you have a very short breakdown, which then goes all the way down again. In terms of energy, like the drums are already like all gone. Even though in terms of the drums, the only thing that we heard was an offbeat hat. Like we didn't get full energy out of the drums yet. Hello Sai, welcome. Congratulate you for your stuff that you're doing here. Keep it up. Thank you. bit of an odd snare. One of the things that you'll see in this snare is that it has a lower harmonic here. In this case, a very strong lower harmonic. This is clashing with the transient of your kick drum. Again, we heard also an atmosphere that is clashing with that lower frequency stuff. Generally speaking, for psytrance, it is basically always the case that you remove this lower fundamental just completely by filtering it out. Of course, here it is okay in like a breakdown or a build-up like this. But when it's playing on top of the kick drum, you don't want this lower fundamental here. You just want the noise component, which is higher up. It is both a mixing thing, and personally I also think it's an aesthetic thing. Here the kick and bass is masked by some kind of impact effect or something like that. Again, if you want to have an impact like that, it is a cool idea to do that, impacting from the start of the drop. But it's probably a good idea to remove the lower frequencies here. I also want to check another thing. It feels like the bass line is louder than the kick, which should be the opposite. You should have your kick be the loudest element, because that's the thing that we dance to. That's the thing that we're moving our body to when it comes to the dancing motion. We need a Psytrance full track AI diagnostics tool that we can check if there is a problem with the kick and bass that give text output ideas of how it could be solved. Do we? No, and indeed we don't. We have waveform analyzers that you can just see what is going on with your kick and bass. No need to involve AI in any of this, because it's literally just checking, okay, is there no bleeding from one element to the other? Like even in here when there's other things playing, you can see that, okay, the bass line goes here, this is where the transient of the kick is, and the bass line isn't going to silent, and that's all you need to know. Also loudness, you can check that easily. Is the bass louder than the kick? Yes, it is. That's probably not the best of ideas, because we generally spend, or we generally dance to the kick drum. So there's no need for AI. This is just like a simple check. Especially if you have something in size scope, right? Where you just isolate the kick and bass. Like it can be a little bit hard to check in a full track. But when you're producing, you always have access to just your kick and bass solo.
Just because we can't prove something scientifically.
Doesn't Ozone do that? No. Oh, maybe that. Also some analyzers built in to show any masking between different elements in the track. The program may need an AM stem splitter to work. No. Again, okay, so with masking, one of the things that you want with masking is that you don't want full separation. Like you can have some elements playing on top of each other. That is why you have your supportive synths and your main synths playing in the same frequency region. Like your support synths and your main synths probably play from like, say, like 150 Hz, maybe 100 Hz upwards up until like 10 to 12K. That kind of region is where your synthesis stuff is going to happen, and kick and bass is providing all of the energy in the lower part, and your drums is providing all of the energy in the higher part. In the middle, the kick is also existing, the bass line is also existing, there's stuff from the drums kind of bleeding down, maybe even up until like 1,000, stuff like that. So there's a lot of overlap. So a tool that tells you like, okay, here stuff is overlapping, what that tends to lead to is people just putting in a whole bunch of filters that like cleanly separate stuff because they see something on the analyzer and they want to fix that. I'm not saying that analyzers are necessarily bad, but you need to know how to use them. And you need to know that at the end of the day, it's the ears that matters most. Right? I talk a lot about the analyzers and I talk a lot about waveform analysis and those kind of things. Waveform analysis is one of the few things that I will say, like, it's better to trust the analyzer than your ear, because it is not something that you can necessarily hear unless you are in a fully treated room and you're playing it very loud, which most of the people are never going to be. Most of like hobby producers will never be in a treated room with proper monitors with like a loud setting, because like this is an issue that the louder it plays, the more it becomes a problem. Like if you're at the festival, you really are going to hear it when a kick and bass just isn't separated like that, because that is where you feel it. Because you feel that kick and bass in your chest, and most people at home just don't have the setup to replicate that kind of movement to the chest that you're going to get from a kick and bass that is properly separated or not. That to be able to hear that difference essentially. And when it comes to AI tools, to be honest, I'm perfectly happy with all of the tools that we have now, and I never use AI for my mixing. Personally, I think that I would like to make my own decisions when it comes to the mixing stuff. I also am not a fan of the whole ozone. Let us listen to your music for half a second and we'll generate a chain for you kind of AI approach that they have in some plugins. It's maybe is for some people, but for me, the whole fun of music making is doing it yourself. And AI doesn't really help with that. There was actually a post on Reddit recently in regards to Synth GPT, I think, which is that new AI synth. Let me see if I can find it here, yeah. I commented under it. If you want to read it, I have a comment under there. But is Synth GPT worth it? Curious. And I say no, music production is a creative endeavor. If you'd like to skip the creative parts of that, may I suggest becoming an accountant or an insurance broker? Because there's no creativity in a job like that. Somebody had a different reply in here, comparing it to MIDI generators, which I don't find a fair comparison. But like AI for me, as much as possible, I would personally like to have that stay out of music production. I don't think it's a good thing for art to automate the process. That being said, I do use AI. I also use AI art sometimes to market my stuff, especially on the Eclipse channel. We can debate up until the end of time how exactly the ethics works. But yeah, that is. To be honest, I don't feel like having that debate right now. We'll just continue listening to some more music. So next up, we have Present here with Gratitude. Looks very nice in terms of cover. Sounds very empty here. Sudden start of the kick and bass is very strange. This is a very strange looking kick, with the kick going down like that and then having a sub here. And then the bass playing some stuff over here. Also there's like drums randomly panning around, which is a bit of a strange idea. I don't really like it.
Allow yourself the freedom to be bored and stop making excuses to relax.
Very loud vocal there. Like I can hear the offbeat hi-hat doing like strange rhythms.
And stop making
Usually that just sits on the offbeat.
Take one moment to be grateful and appreciate where you are. Then what's the point you keep trying in the first place?
To be honest, it's really hard to give feedback on this kind of stuff. Like it's very clear to me that you're just starting out. Like this is, I would say that this is somebody's first track, right? In terms of production quality, it's a little bit all over the place. The best advice that I can give you is spend half an hour every day listening to professional tracks that you like on your system and seeing where you're differing. Like try to actively listen to them.
For a second and take one moment to be grateful. Why do you constantly need more?
The panning hi-hats make me dizzy. Yeah, it's a strange decisions what is being made here. Also just the hats playing seemingly random patterns. Chick 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 chick. That's not really something that you're like easily able to dance to. We again have that issue of the track has been playing for 3.5 minutes now and we still hear the acid line that it started out with. Like that is just playing throughout the whole thing. So that becomes very still, becomes fairly boring. At some point you just need to let that element go. And that would probably have been in the intro already. Like the intro should probably, at the end of the intro, you just stop the acid line and then you just have the kick and bass playing for a little while. Maybe play some one-shots, that kind of stuff. But the main advice, like I can give you some band-aid fixes for certain problems that this track has. But the main advice is just, as I said, try to listen every day for half an hour to some music that isn't yours, and try to actively listen, like what are they doing in the low frequencies, what are they doing in the mid-range, how is it sounding, and then eventually you're going to get used to what music is supposed to sound like, and you'll be able to hear the difference between your tracks and the tracks that you actually like.
Slow down for a second and stop chasing the insurmountable end goal because it doesn't exist. Take one moment to be grateful and appreciate where you are. Then what's the point you keep trying in the first place? Slow down for a second and stop chasing the insurmountable end goal because it doesn't exist.
I'll keep working on it. It's about my 4th export. I mean, yeah, that is... I don't know, it didn't say anything about the amount of exports. I feel like this is the first track that you've ever made, right? Which is fine, and what I would personally do at this point is I would just move on to the next track. Try to see if you can get a few new ideas. It's going to take hundreds of tracks before you're going to be at the level where people say like, this is like professionally sounding, the way that nowadays people make professional music. And slowly you will learn things, and hopefully the process itself is enjoyable.
Be grateful. Slow down for a second.
But other artists, you need to keep in mind, some other artists have had 20, 25 years of experience under their belt in which they have made hundreds of tracks, which, I mean, like 99% of those tracks also have never gone anywhere, and at some point they also sounded absolutely terrible, like they didn't know what they were doing. And at some point you're slowly going to build up. I mean, you're already there. You're slowly going to build up to a point where, as I said, it's going to become more and more professional sounding. But that takes, as I said, I would say at least 100 tracks before you're there.
Slow down for a second and take one moment to be grateful.
They say, right, it becomes 10,000. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. And
Slow down for a second.
yeah, that is.
To be grateful.
There's a reason for that. It just takes time to learn how to make really good stuff. The most important part is that you enjoy the learning aspect of it, because you're going to need to do a lot of that throughout the musical career, and I'm still doing that as well, even after 12 years of producing and having done this full music stuff full time now for like 1.5 years. It being my main source of income for 4 years.
To be grateful.
So it just takes a lot of time to actually get to a level where people say like, oh, this is nice what you're doing. I am now at a point where slowly people start listening to my music on Spotify and actually enjoy it on a daily basis. So that was after 12 years and hundreds, maybe not maybe thousands of failed experiments. So there's no reason to be ashamed of your second track not sounding the best. Sometimes I feel a little bad when this I wouldn't say happens, but when people post their track and they clearly put a lot of effort into it and it's just a beginner track, and it's at that point really hard to say something positive about it. So like I hope people don't take that personal, and I hope people can handle that. I've never really had, I think apart from one time where I got after a feedback stream a DM from somebody that said like, hey, I didn't really appreciate it the way that you talked about the track, that you didn't say anything positive. And I just had to be dead honest, like at my point or at my point in my career, I'm at the point now where I would consider that I'm making professionally sounding music. At least the stuff that I'm working on right now, the stuff that isn't out yet. Even if I listen to my first album, it's like on the edge. Like the ideas are kind of there. It's kind of decently mixed, but it's still like flimsy. You know what I mean? It just takes a long time, and then trying to explain to those people like the difference in level between me in terms of experience and the things that I hear and the way that I write music and their music is, I don't really know how to say this without sounding either arrogant or I don't know, like it's to be honest, I don't really know how to say it, so I'm just going to stop talking. It's raining hard now. Does that get picked up on the microphone? Just lay it on this projector, we can handle it. Most people can take feedback. Yeah, exactly. Most people can take it. Sometimes when it comes to feedback, some people take it as criticism of them as a person and not their music, I guess. So some people, I guess, get offended by getting feedback from me. And maybe I am sometimes a little bit overly negative. And maybe I should spend a little bit more time trying to see some positive things in there. But some tracks, it is really hard to say, because I don't want to lie. I don't want to sit here and say like, hey, I like this thing, I like what you're doing there, and just give them false information. Not hearing it anyway. How can I join your Discord, brother? Apparently there is some issues with that today. At least somebody else asked for the link and did not get in for a little while, but I hope that the link will work. Either way, let's move on to the next track. I'll take a break after a few more tracks. We have 2.06 something dark here by Entheon. Entheon? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Either way, Jules Sieben. Let's have a listen. Would appreciate some review and constructive criticism. That's what we're here for. Okay, no stress, I'll try again later. I mean, hopefully the link works for you. I like the kick, I like the cleanliness of the bass line. I'm not a fan of the tonality of the bass because it doesn't really have a click to it. It just has like a... It doesn't really have that like snap to the bass itself. Personally, I like a nice, strong transient on my bass sounds. Getting some really cool sound design here. I like what you're doing in that regard. Here's an issue that I see often, also even in my mixes, where the kick without the snare is okay, and then you play the kick and a snare or another element, and its transients kind of combine. This can become a problem when you're mixing, because this can hit the limiter, and this can cause some limited distortion on the kick drum, especially on the later parts here, because the limiter has a release to it. So when it comes to your snare, what you can do is you can actually take an LFO tool, like this, and you can literally just cut out the transient, like just sidechain the transient, like very little over here, just like half a millisecond, and then you just mix it in until the waveform shows that it's like semi-flat. It can be a little bit more, but you, generally speaking, don't want like a click that extends really far out of your kick drum. Because of course the kick drum is supposed to be the loudest element in your track. And again, one of the things that you can also find is that your snares have lower fundamentals, or like a fundamental, which you probably want to remove, because that is one of those things that layers really annoyingly with your kick drum as well. Sliding bass is a little bit on the loud side. It is again nice and clean though, nicely phase lined as well. What do you think about pushing the snare transient a tiny bit over in time so the snare... What do you think about pushing the snare a tiny bit over in time so the snare transient ends up in the dip of the kick drum? That could be an approach, but then what you get is it sounds like you're having two elements that are a little bit out of sync. You can do that. Maybe it works when it comes to a snare that really doesn't have like a strong click to it. Sometimes you hear a snare that is just purely like noise. Then it can work. Because that's essentially at that point you're doing the same thing with the LFO tool, in that the noise part of that snare just comes in a little bit later. Either if you're moving that backwards, or if you're moving, or if you're just removing the first bit of the noise. Noise is always noise, so that's always going to sound the same, no matter where it is in like the sample. But some snares actually have like a transient to it, a little tick, a little click to it. In those cases, it can be like it sounds out of sync with the actual track then. The snare feels pretty low, maybe that's why it clashes. It can be the case that that's why it clashes as well. But that's more of a aesthetic choice. Like this is obviously like a darker version of psytrance. So I can 100% see that being an aesthetic choice. I wouldn't put like a very strong noise snare on top of this, because there's not a lot of high frequency stuff here. And this is clearly meant to be a darker track. So there's workarounds that don't involve like using a different type of snare here. Like the snare in and of itself is correct, it just needs to be mixed in properly, essentially. In this case, it actually looks like it's the hat that is on top of here, the hat layer for the kick drum. In that case, maybe you can compress it if you want to. Like a compressor could also take care of the combination of the hat and the kick. don't know if I said it, but overall the sound design and the musical ideas of this track is great. I like all of the little plays that you're doing sometimes with the kick and bass. Like, there's some small details about this track that I would try to fix, but overall, it's a great track. I sometimes feel like there's a few synths that overpower the kick and bass a little bit. Like here, every once in a while with the FM synth, sometimes it goes into an area where it becomes like extra loud with the filter in the way that that is set up. So a little bit of extra compression on that to keep it in check. Like in these areas over here, sometimes it gets overpowered and then you lose the power from the kick and bass itself, which we obviously don't want because the kick and bass is still the most important element of the track. Like here, you can see how the waveform just kind of does this. It widens out a little bit. You want to try to keep that effect to a minimum. There's no way to completely avoid it, but generally speaking, when you look at the waveform of your whole track, the kick and bass, wherever the kick and bass is playing, should essentially be flat. You know it's good when it's not really your taste, but it still grabs you. Yes. But this is my... I mean, when it comes to psytrance taste, there isn't really any taste of psytrance that I don't enjoy. Like, I produce a specific type of psytrance, but that doesn't mean that I won't listen to dark psy or psycore or high tech or forest psy or any of that stuff. It's just that, like, I like producing one specific type of psytrance, but I like listening to all of them. Like, when I go to a festival, I will listen to all of the different styles of psytrance. Anything from progressive to the darker stuff, the high-tech stuff at 5 in the morning, whatever it is. I like all of it. Even Psybient is I really like. Sometimes I really like the stuff that doesn't even have a drop sometimes, just like the chill-out area. That is one of the reasons why I really liked Burning Mountain last year, is because it had a little bit of everything. Like, it went from progressive during the day, which not a lot of people like, but I am completely fine with that. And then it just goes, I guess, through the more like full-on stuff, the kind of stuff that I like to do. And then it goes into the it isn't really like dark side, but it gets to, it's almost like where full-on meets dark side kind of thing. Like Arjuna played, and I would even say like Aja is almost at that level where it is clearly still full-on, but it has like influences of the dark side already into it and that kind of stuff. And then if you want the real dark side stuff, you go to the second stage. There it's like even darker and even more experimental and that kind of stuff. So for me, when somebody says like there's not really a style that doesn't resonate with me, I guess the only style that doesn't resonate with me, I made a short on that a few days ago, I posted it, is the old school stuff. And the reason for that is old school stuff, like I like the technical aspects of psytrance production, and I see old school psytrance as just technically inferior to what is coming out now. There is maybe an edge of truth to it in that there was more emotion in it back in the day, more soul in it back in the day. But I made a short about this, like, what are you going to get hate for if you say it out loud? And I said, like, my opinion on the old school psytrance stuff. And there were immediately people in the comments saying, yeah, but it's more emotional, it is more this, more that. And of course, that was the whole point. I was trying to bait some comments there as well to get some more engagement. But it is the way that I feel, in that, for me, the only genre that I don't like listening to, I guess, is more of the old school type of psytrance. Like the early, or the 2000s, early 2010s, and of course anything before that as well. It just sounds like old to me, and therefore, like, technically, from a technical production standpoint, it sounds inferior to me. maybe from a musical standpoint, people that are really nostalgic, of course. That there's people that are more into the musical side of production. But I'm very much into the technical side, and I like technical details. And old school psytrance, just by the nature of the technology that they had available back in the day, it isn't as technologically advanced as the stuff that we do now. Thanks for the feedback, guys. Much appreciated. You're welcome. Glad I could be helpful. How long have I been streaming? I can play another one here. Your Grace. Hey, now we had this person, Jakmoer Vardar, but submitted by somebody else. Didn't we? I've seen this cover art today. I just played a track from this person, but it was submitted by somebody else, right? I totally get what you're saying with Goa trance. It just lacks the physical impact for me, but I do like it for a bit. I mean, if it's there, I may hop over to a dance floor where it is. But it wouldn't be like if it's the only dance floor available, I will be there. But if it isn't, like if I have a choice, I will never go to the Goa stage and spend a lot of time there. In that case, take the old school influences and modernize it. That could be a good idea. I mean, that is at the end of the day what we're doing when we're trying to emulate something like a Virus FM or an Acid line or any melodic line or melodic ARP, something like that. That is, of course, ideas or concepts, at least, that have been around for a very, very long time. We just make a very modern version of that. And that entails some processing that we do nowadays that back in the day wasn't done. Mainly in the form of the loudness. Yes, my wife and I. Oh, okay. Cool. That's funny. Husband and wife both producing. Very cool. Your Grace then, by Jakmoer Vardar. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But that's kind of what I do here on the stream. Very loud.
Welcome, Your Grace.
There's more of a techno vibe here. I mean, for techno that works, the synth. You are bleeding again into your kick drum with your bass line. What I would do is I would add a photo. You can just fix this with add a photo. There's no need to resample. Unless you're doing stuff like this where the kick has rolls and stuff like that. In that case, I would probably consider resampling this. So that you can, I guess, fade it out before the kick transient itself. As opposed to having it bleed into that transient. Right now you can see the bassline essentially continues into the kick drum itself. Which means that you're losing a lot of punch.
Welcome, Your Grace.
You can actually notice it here in the transient, how the higher frequencies come through more when that fill thing is playing. Here you can see we have higher frequencies than anywhere else because the kick stops here earlier. There's modern sounding Goa style tracks though. Yeah, at the end of the day, the genre itself also has modernized. I guess it's not really Goa that I have a problem with. I have a problem with more older, like old school music, which at the end of the day tended to be a lot of Goa. Like a lot of the Goa is old. So I kind of associate that with older styles of psytrance, or with older psytrance, that specific genre. But that doesn't have to be the case. Like progressive is also early 2000s. That's when it started. Maybe even the 90s. Overall, I really like the idea. I think the synths still are maybe a little bit too loud. Like that screaming synth. The other thing is that really you're losing a lot of punch from the kick drum, and it sounds a little bit random whether every kick transient is going to hit or doesn't hit. Like here you can hear a nice knock that we're getting from the kick drum because the kick drum is playing on its own and nothing is bleeding into it. But once the bass plays with it, you can hear the transients don't sound as stable and they lose a lot of punch. With stable, I mean that every transient sounds a little bit different. Like it's a very detailed effect. The changes in the transient, it's mainly the stability, right, or the lack of punch, right? That is the main effect that you hear. When the rolls come, the kick that sits in the rolls has more of a transient than the actual kick that we're normally listening to. But honestly, other than that, there's not really much to criticize about this track. So there's a few fixes, and then I would say it's ready, release it, because it sounds very cool. For your feedback, I guess there has to be an I in there. For your feedback, I do believe that one of those things that some people might not like and be a little mad at the beginning, but they will be grateful after some time looking back at it, keep it up. I think, yeah. I mean, the person that talked to me about the feedback when I said like, or when they said like they weren't happy with the way that I criticized their music, they were still happy with the fact that I gave them feedback. So it was still like a very mature conversation. They weren't like angry at me. They were just saying like, hey, you're sometimes like very overly negative maybe. After some points there, from that point, I always decided to try to say at least one positive things. But sometimes there's just nothing to say. For lack of better ways of saying it. So yeah, the track that played before, this was a little while back in the stream. The track that played before was an example of that, where it's really clear that you're just starting out, and to just say it bluntly, you don't really know what you're doing yet. You still need to learn the core essentials of how audio works, of how music is supposed to sound, of all of that kind of stuff, before you can actually start to make something that is like possible, and then you're going to make it work, or then you're going to work on making it actually sound professional, which is another step forward, I guess. But at least if something is passable, I can say like, okay, this and this and this idea I like, fix this up maybe a little bit like that and that and that, and then you're already like have the core of something that could potentially become a good idea. But like with some tracks, that just doesn't happen. And I would also I sometimes need to just say that as well. And I think, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm trying to be honest. And I know for a fact that I cannot make everybody happy. It's just annoying that sometimes I know that I maybe hurt people's feelings and something like that, when that's definitely not the intention, right? At the end of the day, I'm judging your music and not you as a person. As I said before, some people not necessarily take it personally, but they think that it's an attack on them. When it's just saying like, okay, this is where you are in your musical career. This is all of the things that you can improve. This is maybe the ways that you can improve. Like I said before, I didn't really give feedback on the track, but I laid out a plan for them how they could improve their learning over time. And then hopefully if they follow that, maybe for a few years, then at some point they are making professional music. at the end of the day, I know that I cannot please everyone, and I'm not trying to. Let's see, there's no patrons here. We do have quite a bit in the queue, but I am going to take a break now because it's been an hour and a half. So I'm going to put on some music. The way that I'm going to do that is probably through Eclipse. For those that don't know, Eclipse is my record label. The one that I started with a couple of friends. One of which was in the chat before as well. Normally I always get a mix of them of Eclipse recommended, but it doesn't seem to happen today. So I'll have to actually search for it. But I'll just put on the mix because it's has some nice visuals, so you guys have something to look at as well. Yeah, this is Eclipse. The page over here. In 2 days I'm going to be posting another mix. It's going to be a little bit of a special one because it's going to be celebrating my birthday. For those that don't know, the 4th of June is my birthday. I have a few things planned for my birthday. I'm actually going to go away, so I won't be here. Otherwise I would have also done like a live stream or something to celebrate like I did in years prior. But for this time I'm going to go back to not to my parents, but we're both traveling to Siena. So that we can stay a few days there. I'm going to take like a 3-day break. And I've been editing and all of that kind of stuff to get that prepared. And I'm also going to be posting a mix. Not one that is like an hour long, but one that is going to be 2 hours long. So that will be a little bit of a special. So yeah, if you're not subscribed already, please make sure that you're subscribed. So that you catch that when that comes out. And then, let's see which track. I'll just play this track. And then I'll take a quick break. Once one of the tracks has finished, we'll get back into it and then we'll listen to your guys' music.
night, dream any dream you wanted to dream. Naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes, every kind of pleasure you could conceive. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality.
For the rest of the mix, of course, you have to go to Eclipse. This actually gives me a nice time, because I just poured myself a new drink, to talk about this. This is one of the biggest annoyances that I've had with modern day society. With the new tabs that they have on the new Pepsi bottles, because they changed the bottles. I guess this is still an old one. Like, this was my old drink. Oh no, this is also a new one. It used to be the case, this one is broken. So it used to be the case that you could just take the tap off and you could do whatever you want with it. Now I know that nowadays we have to be careful with litter and recycling, and I'm all for that. But please allow me to just take off the tap and don't do stuff like this where it stays attached. Do you know what I mean? Where it's actually part of this thing. This is so annoying. It feels like I'm treated by the government as if I am a child that cannot, you know, keep these two things together. It's so annoying. Especially when I'm sitting here and I just quickly want to pour myself a drink or something like that, and it just gets in the way and it's annoying. I don't like it. I'm all for green policy, and I think we should do a lot more to combat climate change, but this is one of the things that I don't agree with. And it's now everywhere. In the Netherlands, every bottle that is sold I believe, has to have its tap attached to the bottle. And here in Italy now, there are some bottles that start doing it, and slowly it's going to become more and more and more. And it's super annoying. Just one of those frustrations that you sometimes have to vent, I guess. Anyway, there's no new post. Let me just quickly. Very nice kick and bass, tonally speaking. I also like that it's resampled and completely clean. Bass could be a little bit quieter, or the kick a little bit louder maybe. Because now the bass is a little bit louder than the kick. Usually you want your kick a little bit louder. So give it maybe like 2 more dB. This sound, well, it's very, very cool. Could be a little bit quieter. That very strong resonance that you have there. You have to always be careful when you're doing like very resonant sounds like that. Here you have some kicks playing on top of basses, which you don't want. You want to probably remove the bass part from there. Yeah, I would probably increase the kick, maybe even by 3 dB, and then add 1 dB to the bass, so that both of them become a little bit louder. Because now sometimes you have some synths that overpower them. Nobody likes those caps. You are allowed to break them off. I know, but I'm scared that if I break it off now, I'm going to be clumsy and I'm going to spill it all over the place. I'll do it later when the stream is over. I like the sound design, it's very, very unique. Here again, you have one of those sounds that sometimes just pokes out of the mix, which is a little bit strange sounding. You also have the same problem with your transient of the snare. As you can see, this transient is just pushing up really hard. Again, you can use an telephoto like this, where you just have a very short, like almost like, it's not really sideshading of course, but any snare that is on top of the kick will just get its transient cut out by a certain amount. What I'm missing in this track sometimes when it's in the lower energy part, when the drums aren't playing, is those traditional psychedelic atmospheres. You know, the atonal ones that move up and down. There used to be a guy, Hermes, who was always in my chat. He might still be around, he might not be, I don't know where he is. He hasn't shown up in quite a bit of time. But he once helped me with getting those kind of atmospheres, and I made a video on them. Where can I study to get better? I have so many ideas, and like you said, just a bit all over the place. One of the things I can recommend, to be honest, is my masterclass. That's like 24 hours of video footage that I just show the whole process of making a track. There's a few things in music production that you cannot really encompass in one tutorial because they're concepts that sit throughout the whole track. The other thing that just happens is experience, right? That is something that happens over time. And as I said, the listening part is really, really important. I am here on this channel, aren't I? Yeah, so watch more videos, watch more material. But don't think, to be honest, when it comes to tutorials, don't think that they're the only thing. The tutorial really should be the inspiration for the actual learning part, which is experimenting yourself and doing the work yourself. Like, no matter how many tutorials you watch, they won't train your ears. So the actual training should happen by just listening. Overall with this track, I have no notes about the ideas. There's just some mixing aspects. As I said before, you have a lot of issues with synths being too loud and just pushing the waveform up. Even here with, for example, the fill. The fill is like peak level louder than the kick and bass. Now that is not necessarily an issue, right? Like the loudness itself is okay, but what I would probably do at that point is just compress them so that the peak to RMS goes down. They stay at the same loudness, but they don't just peak louder than the kick and bass itself. I love this. I think, yeah, this is a... Idea-wise, this is a very good track. As I said, it needs work on the mix, but the musical aspect of it is, I would say, there's nothing to complain about. Or complain or, like, give feedback about. Maybe a breakdown would be nice at some point. There was, like, a little break somewhere, but maybe a longer one. But that's not really this style of psytrance, is it? It's the more progressive side is where you usually are going to get the breakdowns. Overall though, sounds really, really nice. Keep working on it. Think a little bit about the mix. Of course, make an intro and outro and that kind of stuff as well. But it sounds really good. Nice percussions, nice squelches too. I agree, yeah, the sound design, all of the... It's one of the things that I really like about that style of psytrance is the way that they're using percussions in not just like your main percussions, like your main drum loop, but all of the extra stuff that they tend to do, right? Where there's extra snares, there's extra stuff like that. That's not something that we really do in the more progressive style of psytrance that I like to make. But it is very interesting hearing how all of those things are used throughout I guess the more nighttime style of psytrance. Next up, we have Psy here, E30. Fairly cool cover art. Let's see. This is probably not going to be psytrance. Getting more of a housey type feel here. I like the idea. I would like to hear a bit, like it feels like the kick and bass is now just like a kind of thing. Even though the bass line is playing like melodies and such, it would be nice to have like some short pauses in there. That it's not just the wall of sub bass, but there's some actual playing in the lower frequencies as well. You get some dynamics out of that, you get a little bit of groove out of that. Again, we have some panned hats, which I'm not a fan of. It lacks the sharpness of house for me. Yeah, I guess something like the open hats that you have on the offbeat could have a little bit more air, could have a little bit more spice in the higher frequencies. But I think the main thing is the main issue that I have with the track is the lack of dynamics in the lower frequencies, just the bass line playing continuously. It would be nice to have some of the notes a little bit shorter, as I said, so that you get a little bit more groove to it. Overall though, very cool idea. I like it. Groovy Forest, work in progress. Me again with an older Forest track that I found on my hard drive. Might polish it up with your feedback. Thanks again. I haven't produced in a long time before getting into it again recently, hence the 2020 date of the track. Okay. No, wait, sorry. I can play it from Discord again, so that we don't get autoplay. The waveform looks very, very flat here. It's gonna be nice and loud. Or maybe not. I thought it would be louder. But I guess it's not mastered here. Again, a lot of bleeding on the bass line. I thought that was the same with the other track, right, that you posted. In that what is essentially happening is the waveform of this note is continuing into this bass line over here, and then this bass line is continuing. You can see how the kick goes up and then down, and then really over here it starts to oscillate around the silence line, which is this blue line over here. I don't know how well that blue line is going to show up on YouTube with all of the video compression and all that such, but you essentially want your kick, transient, and all of your bass stuff to oscillate around that. So in this case you would need to resample that bass line in order to achieve that, and maybe even the kick drum, because it seems like the kick drum is going into the part where the bass line should be also. Maybe not, maybe the kick actually stops here and this is the actual bass note playing. Whatever it is, it needs to be cleaned up. Again, you have some synths which are louder than your kick and bass. I say again, but I don't remember if that was your track or some of the other tracks that we heard. Yeah, it seems to be an issue in many of my tracks. I do have a video on just this part. Right, there's my ultimate guide to kick and bass video, which is a must-watch for everybody making psytrance. But how to make sure your kick and bass is clean or something like that is also a video that is like 15 minutes long maybe, that just explains how to do that part, just the cleaning up process of your kick and bass. We can see well also the blue lines of the signalizer. Okay, yeah, so that is the silence line. So if there's nothing playing, then that would be where the signal is, right? It would be silent, so that is where the signal would play. When it comes to kick and bass, you want it to oscillate around that line, around that silence. You don't want it to be pushed up by any like bleeding signal from the bass note into the transient of the kick or into the transient of the next bass note, something like that. Overall, I would say the mix sounds a little bit too dull, and that it doesn't really have enough high frequency content for me. Like obviously the material is there, but it just needs a little bit of boost either in volume or just boosting like above 10k-ish. My favorite plugin for that is not much of a secret anymore because I say it all the time. But Lufticus, you put it on 40k and then you just boost it up until you get the kind of sharpness that we're after for psytrance. And that is the same thing that you'll hear in techno. Those kind of sharp cymbals that you hear in the high frequencies. I like the gated crash there. That's a cool thing. Is that a Mac simulation that looks somewhat like a Mac EQ? Yes, exactly. It is. There are some other Mac plugins as well, but this one is free. And for me, it's a little bit of a one-trick pony. I don't use it anywhere else. But for brightening up your top-end loops, It's really good at what it does. The work in progress I sent is in its very early stage. Please consider that in your feedback. I don't. I always treat stuff as if it's final material. So I just point out all of the things that I would improve on it. Because otherwise I can say like, oh, the mix isn't finished, but I'm sure you're going to get to it. And then I can not worry about the whole mix part. Which means that I don't actually give you all of the feedback that one might like want from me. So I'm just going to treat it as if it is a finished track. That is how I treat all of the music. So that's also how I'll treat your music as well. Here you can hear in the background as well the kind of atmospheres that I was hinting at before in the stream. I don't know who it was anymore, but there was one track that sounded really cool but lacked a little bit of those atmospheres that you often hear in this type of psytrance. Here you can hear them. On the background it's the ones that like sweep and swoosh. You hear the one that goes shh. Alright, I can take it. I mean, as I talked about this before, I won't hammer on it too much, but the way that I give feedback is, I don't treat anybody like especially or favorably in that way, in that I just try to honestly tell you what I would improve about the track. Not really a fan of the bass melody that sits in here, where it just alternates between two notes. It just goes... sounds like an ambulance. Overall though, very cool track. Yeah, these kind of atmospheres, that is what I meant with like the more psychedelic, almost atonal kind of atmospheres. It's usually like an atonal patch with a lot of reverb on it. And that's how you get those kind of sounds. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more tracks. And today I have to... I cannot really go very long. Like I cannot do 3.5, 4 hours like I usually would. And that is usually what I aim for. So I think for today I'm going to close the queue and just finish off these tracks. As I said before, I am going to go away for a couple of days. So I need to work in advance. All of the work that I normally do on those 3 days that I'll be gone, I of course have to do in advance. So that all of the videos are ready and everything. And that just continues. So that means that I have more editing work to do than I would normally do during like a week. So I'm just going to close the queue for now and we'll listen to these final 6 tracks here. Maybe it's a fun idea to again do a check on how much I edited this week. Because I can see that in my... Where is it? In this software over here. This is the AMD driver installer software thing. This week it doesn't say. Why doesn't it not say it? Last time we checked it, it would always say it. Oh no, this is After Effects. That's why. I need Premiere. Only 60 hours. Last 2 times it was 80. I guess I didn't work on Conversations with Projector this week. That's why. That would explain it. There's going to be a new episode of that as well. I know there's a little pause since the last episode, but I have a whole batch of... how many episodes do I have? 11? That I'm currently working on. And for 3 of them, I only need to record the vocal part or the voice part of me when I'm talking about the topics and give the intro and the outro. For those that don't know, that is in regards to my second channel, which is where I post Conversations with Projector, which is all of the stream highlights and all of the chats that I have during the stream. This channel over here, also Projector. Not a lot of people know about this, but maybe I should market it a little bit more. I have now mentioned it in a video that I recorded, maybe even 2 of them. So hopefully more people will come over. But for those that don't know, all of the stream highlights and stuff like that from my production streams, not the feedback streams, but all of my other streams, I edit those down, put text on them, text to speech when I'm saying out a question or something like that, and interacting with chat. And all of those conversations then turn into videos. Which, to be honest, I just find them interesting to watch. I don't know how much other people find them interesting. But it's content that I like to make. As I said, this year, for me, one of my main goals is to make my channel more personally about me. Or the content that I'm posting, make it more personally about me. So this is one of the ways that I'm doing that. And I hope that it will just continue to grow. Next up, we have another track here from Present. This is Faith. First full track, also paid for royalty-free vocals. Okay. I think my feedback is going to be very similar to what I said in the last track, and that you're just going to need to listen to the differences between professional music and you're very early on in your production journey. Like over here, this is just the sequence playing. What you would probably want is a few pads under it, maybe a few one-shots over it. Just stuff that makes it more interesting over time. This kick drum again looks a little bit wonky in that there's the kick part and then there's a pause here and then there's the sub over here. Again, very strange sidechaining on the bass line. Just like the last track.
Between giving up and letting go.
Very loud vocal. Again, massive bleeding into the kick from your bass line.
By giving up, you lose hope because you resist.
Kick feels also a little bit quiet. Not just because it's being bled into
You gain hope.
by the bass line, but also the bass line feels loud in comparison with the kick. It's really hard to say if it's too loud, the bass line, or not, because it has such a strange sidechaining effect on it. Not a fan of the offbeat hat being so long. Usually you want your offbeat hat to stop when the kick starts to play, like the transient starts to play. And also you wanted to have it on every offbeat, not just every other. It sounds a little bit strange like this. The vocal is way louder than the rest of the track. Yeah, exactly. It's way too loud. Also, the rest of the track doesn't really evolve in any way.
By simply trusting the journey.
It almost reminds me of, we used to have a guy in our feedback that didn't really make psytrance,
Source within.
but he made poems and then wrote them out into
On what you
vocals and then produced the track around that. So the track would be entirely full vocals, like for 8 minutes there would be something constantly talking. This kind of feels that way, and that the vocal is really meant, the way that it's like presented now, it's like the vocal is really meant to be really out there, and the rest of the music almost sounds like background music for something that isn't necessarily meant to be danced to. Now, of course, this person is trying to make psytrance, so that might not be their intention. Right now, it's just the mix is just presented that way. Again, some pan action bridge hats. Yeah, just keep the hats in the center. Hats are fundamental to the groove of the track, so they shouldn't be bouncing around, because then when the track is played in mono, they're going to collapse in strange ways. I mean, you can break the pattern with the drums. For example, hi-hat is not necessarily every offbeat. Usually with something like an offbeat hi-hat, it is every offbeat, and then you put other drums in there or other loops in there to make it more interesting. But generally speaking, you have a closed hat on every 16th note and then an open hat on every offbeat 8th note. And then yeah, you can build around that with more drums to make it more exciting and not so still, because if you just do that, you run into the very real problem of the track not really having a groove to it, not really having a feeling to it, because it's just those sounds static. That is also the reason why the closed hat usually gets sidechained. Not necessarily because you need that for any kind of mixing purpose or something like that, but mainly so that it has a little bit more groove and it doesn't sound like just straight 16 notes. It has a little bit of wobble to it then, which negates the, as they call it, machine gun effect. It feels like that open hat is meant to be secondary. It's sucking this into the snare. With another shorter open hat, every offbeat would give it more drive and groove. Yeah, exactly.
Ever-flowing, endless supply.
Like at the end of the day, when you think about how we dance to music, and which is of course very important in psytrance, those elements aren't like they aren't necessarily fully stylistic, right? They have a function. So we have listened to so much psytrance that we know what those elements are meant to do, and anything that like deviates from there is going to sound at least somewhat off to us, and therefore we're going to have a harder time dancing. It's for the same reason that the kick like should play at least every beat. I know here you're doing more stuff with the kick, which I'm also not really a fan of.
By simply trusting the journey.
Honestly, if you remove the kick and bass and all of the drums here, you probably have a really cool... what you can do then is, as I said, like that other person before, is you can write out maybe like a poem or a story or something like that for 8 to 10 minutes, and then just have that in text-to-speech, and then have these background arps and stuff like that and melodies. That could be a really cool idea. It's not necessarily psytrance, but it almost feels like you're trying to do two things here, like in that you're making dance music and you're trying to tell us a story through this vocal. And of course you could commit to either, but both of them requires massive changes in the way that you're writing the music.
By simply trusting the journey. By simply trusting the journey.
Every time I kill a mosquito, a new one presents itself. My parents say, like, anytime you kill a fly, two appear on its funeral. Which is very much how it feels now, because there's constantly mosquitoes everywhere. It's I guess it's just the season now, right? Because it's the spring, I guess. But I have one of those vape things. Hope you got him. I did not get him. No. I'm not going to hunt for him now because, of course, I'm busy. But I have one of those vape things where you put the cartridges in. That gives like a lemon scent for 2 days, and that should scare them away. But that's in the other room, because that is where I sleep, and there it's more important. So that means that anytime a mosquito enters in this apartment, it just by default comes this way. And I don't really have a nice socket to put it in, because you plug it in directly in the socket, and all of the sockets around here are used with my computer and the piano and the 3 monitors and the whole DJ setup and the monitors now and all of that stuff. And the only 3 sockets that I have are the ones that like are pointing straight up, meaning that it wouldn't be able to hold the cartridge thing in there, so it would just fall out. So I cannot use it here. When you said vape, I thought 420. No, this stuff. These things. Do you know what I mean? It just has the cartridges in there, and it smells like lemon for 2 days in your apartment when you put it in. And every 2 days, you have to refresh them. I see a word in the chat that only Dutch people understand. I know what you mean, but like Twitch culture sometimes bleeds over into YouTube chat as well. And on Twitch, that is another way of saying lol. Yeah, I know this product. Exactly, that is the thing that just... It worked really well. Like in the other room, I never have any issues when I'm asleep with like mosquito bites or something like that. So it works really well, but I cannot use it here. There's no socket that I can plug it into here. Next up, we have ZWB. Hello everyone, the track is still work in progress. It's a repost, thanks for the feedback. You're welcome. So this is Nebula 2024-06-02. Just got in line, I was going to send it, but it's finished. I have 2 new music that I didn't show yet. I'm sorry. Today I had to... I don't necessarily have to leave early, but I have so much other work to do
In the shadow.
that if I spend like 4 hours on this stream today, it's not going to work for me. Then you guys don't have any videos next week. I mean, it's not that bad, but then I don't get all of the things done that I want to do today.
Robed in stardust.
Like the intro so far.
Vast cosmos whispers, resonating in grand.
Kick and bass tonality is nice. You have a little bit of bleeding,
Weaving cosmic.
so resample it if you can.
His hands crafting infusions. Eyes like voids.
Of course, this is still a work in progress, as he said, so once it's finished, I hope at least that you get to it. The transient of the kick could be a little bit louder as well. Overall, this track is maybe a little bit too sub-heavy, maybe a little bit too strong on the lowest 2 harmonics here. Both the kick and the bass. Very loud rises here. When it comes to risers and downlifters as well, I always treat them as backing elements. So they never should overtake any musical idea that I have in the track. And in this case, it felt like maybe also because there wasn't really anything else playing. But they really overpower the track there. Don't worry, mate, I'll show it another day. Yeah, next Sunday I'll just be back. I have one Sunday coming up at the end of this month where I won't be able to do a feedback stream because I'll be at Burning Mountain. Like, most likely I won't be back in time, and even if I am back in time, I don't want to spend the Sunday afternoon after a day of traveling streaming. So then there won't be a feedback stream. But other than that, for the foreseeable future, I should just be here every Sunday. Every Sunday. Sorry. I had Burger King today, so sometimes some stuff is coming up. I had to eat quickly, so I just ordered some food, but it's never the best idea to eat Burger King. I feel like there's a main melody in here which isn't really coming through. Like, now it's opening up a little bit, but in the beginning it wasn't. It should probably be a little bit louder, because that is like your main element here, right? And again, you can hear the risers are really overtaking the element, the main ideas. Not the kick and bass, but the musical synths, the musical idea in the middle is overtaken. I like this vocal loop that you have going on here. Again, that is one of those elements that maybe could use another 2 to 3 dB. Dutch Burger King is good. Yeah, I know. The Dutch one is very good. I went there in December to celebrate my sister's birthday with my mother. And we stopped by Burger King one day when we were traveling. And Dutch Burger King was really good. Italian Burger King is also very good. Like, the quality of the meat is very good. But after eating it, you feel a little bit more stuffed. Here again, you have that nice main ARP playing. That should be up front in the mix. Right now, everything feels like it's taking a little bit of a backseat. Overall, I guess one of the issues that I have with this track is that it feels like there's a little bit of reverb playing everywhere. And while you, generally speaking, want reverb on almost all of your elements, you never want it to just be a complete wash of reverb. So what can be the case is that you have reverb on everything, and the dry wet is a little bit too high, and maybe the length is a little bit too long.
A symphony of creation.
Here again, that vocal doesn't really come out, right? The riser right before it is way louder than the vocal itself, so the vocal just kind of takes a backseat.
The nebulae unfold.
Here again, that vocal should play on top of the synth, because that vocal is so important to the story of your track that it really should stand out.
Eyes like
I would probably not cut off the vocal the way that you're doing there. It feels like it gets chopped off by the kick and bass there. Other fast food franchises are available. Yes, but when you get McDonald's, the burger is half the size and you pay the same delivery fees. So I might as well get a bigger burger. Which doesn't... I mean, McDonald's has the same problem. If you eat McDonald's a few hours after, you just feel stuffed. But But I could have just ordered like a proper pizza or something like that as well. You're right in that it's not the best option. One of the reasons why I bought it though is because I bought it at 4 o'clock and my stream starts at 5. And Burger King is by far the fastest in terms of delivery. Like they are the only company that consistently delivers in like half an hour. And today is also national holiday, which means that it's even more like up and down whether or not they deliver. So we can't listen to it while you're speaking. I know I shouldn't have spoken throughout the whole thing. I hope I gave enough feedback. Sometimes when I'm just chatting with people, that tends to happen. I get carried away with the chatting. Normally I say indeed that I want to chat at least or as little as possible during the actual playback. But yeah, unfortunately I did chat through this one. If you want to listen to it again, of course, all of these tracks are available on my Discord. You can go into the feedback on stream and I call out all of the tracks before we play them. So right now we played this Nebula track over here and you can take another listen if you're really that interested. But yeah, so there's a few reasons why I had Burger King today. Just to paraphrase, I guess. Ben Digerich, Chromosphere. I've been working on this track on and off for over a year. Probably overcomplicated, would like some honest feedback so I can finally get it finished. A year is a very long time, but that's also what I do. But I have like... Sorry, wait. I can play it from here. I have like 10 projects that I'm always working on. I don't know if that's also the case with you. Judith, thanks for the feedback. You're welcome. Sorry again if I chatted over it too much. Bit more of a housey vibe here. Little bit of movement on that ARP would be nice. In the ARP maybe opening up its filter cutoff over time. Interesting bassline here. Your kick drum is bleeding into that bassline, so what you probably want to do is make sure that the kick drum stops here, so that the bassline can actually come through. It also looks strange, like the sub is like starting over here and then there's a different sub almost over here in a strange way. I would just have the offbeat have a sub provided by the bassline and this be the sub provided by the kick. Right, so that you get that offbeat groove also in the lower frequencies. No intro, just drums as the intro. It's like a DJ intro. Like you often hear in an extended mix. That is like very normal for house music. Little bit emptier, maybe top melody on top of this would be nice. Personally, not really a fan of the hats already playing here though. Like just let that melody come through, you know what I mean? as a main lead, it feels a little bit weak, but I feel like that's also like aesthetically what you're going for. Like I wouldn't saturate this, I wouldn't like overly compress it, I wouldn't OTT the lead over here. That would just destroy maybe the musical idea that you're going for. But maybe a few extra layers on top of it would be nice. Nice little piano fill there. I like it. Some very strange noise rumble thing here. I guess that's a riser. Usually when it comes to my risers, what I like to do is between like 1000 Hz and 500 Hz, just high pass them so that you don't have any of that lower component in there. The open hats are a little bit too loud in my opinion. To be honest, I didn't pay too much attention to that yet. Maybe that is the case. I'll listen for that in the next drop if that comes. But with house and techno and even psytrance. In psytrance it's even less than with the other two genres that I just mentioned, but that open hat is tends to be very loud. Like with techno it is very loud. It's like the second loudest element of the whole mix after the kick drum. Right, like it's louder than the rumble. Because it's part of the dancing groove that you're dancing to, right? You essentially, when it comes to the way that we dance, with the kick drum there's one movement when the transient of the kick hits, and when the offbeat hat hits there's another movement. So you go like this. Right, like that is the movement that we dance to, and the offbeat hat is such an essential part of that that you tend to want that to be fairly loud. Again though, I'm not really a fan of the hats in the breakdown. Maybe it can be nice for one of the two breakdowns to have that for a little bit. And then even here, since you have like a last point here where it goes more into like a build-up style, you have the hats up until this build-up, and then the hats drop out again. You have the build-up that is coming in now, and then when we get back into the drop, the hats actually start to play again. The drop made me happy. It is a very uplifting track. I would almost say that this is getting close to progressive house. The progressive house tends to have other kick drums, tends to have other bass lines, and overall the leads tend to be more processed and saturated together and layered. So I feel like this is like in between the normal house, but with just like a very lush lead melody on top of it, as opposed to it you're actually trying to make progressive house, right? The kind of style that Martin Garrix does, the stuff that is a little bit closer to big room, in a way. This is just a little bit more dynamic. To be honest, the open hat doesn't bother me with its loudness. I think that is sounding okay. Maybe the ones that I would say are a little bit too loud are the accent open hats, because there's multiple open hats playing. The one that is actually on the offbeat is okay for me, but all of the accents could be a little bit quieter, maybe like 2-3 dB. was aiming for 90 style trance. Trance? Isn't trance faster? Like, I feel like here we're at the 128 BPM range. 126, 128, maybe 130. Usually with even the euphoric style trance, you're speaking 135 to 140 area. Even with like the older stuff. So if that is what you're going for, then I would up the BPM a little bit. And then of course you have your, you need to have your classic trance rolling bass line in there. Not the psytrance style rolling bass line, but the normal trance style rolling bass line. The one that has more layers to it. I think it's 136. Is it? I'm getting 140, 133, 134. It's a little bit on the slow side. Maybe you want to up it to 138-ish. Yeah, trance is usually like 138 to 145, I would even say. Like the psytrance BPMs, the like full-on psytrance BPMs kind of thing. There's some that are faster. I don't know why I'm resetting this, that doesn't matter. But I would, for trance, I would probably go for 138 up until like 145. This range over here. And then if you want like the actual trance vibe to it, you would go for your rolling bass lines for normal trance. Don't confuse them with psytrance, because psytrance does different rolling bass lines. But essentially what you're doing with the trance rolling bass line, let me see if I can find a tutorial. Trance tutorial. I just want to see if I can find an example. I don't want to sit here and watch a whole video, of course. Do you hear how it has like a... dun dun dun? This one is playing at 130, which is very slow.
Layers of mid bass to go along with the sub bass.
Yeah, this is what you want. You want your mid layers on top of that lower bass line. Now he's at 138. Yeah, yeah. Can we hear it, please? I think he's going to get there. That kind of stuff. You know, you hear that kind of luscious mid-range bass layer kind of deal. I don't know the difference between trance and psytrance. Then you should listen to a lot more of both of them, because there's massive differences between the two genres. Normal trance is more based on melodic elements, and psytrance is obviously based on more like psychedelic sound design kind of thing. So yeah, the normal trance tends to be more melodic. Also tends to have key changes, tends to have very strong chords. Psytrance doesn't do that. Or at least most psytrance. I don't want to use terms like traditional psytrance or classic psytrance, because there is prog that does use key changes, but I would also consider that psytrance. There's some people that say like that's not real psytrance, which is very, very annoying. Like I really don't like those kind of arguments. If it's music that you can dance to and it has a strong kick and a strong bass line, and at that point I would almost consider it psytrance, right? It needs to have a few classic elements. It needs to have a few, like the kick needs to sound a certain way, the bass line needs to sound a certain way. But if that is met, then it's psytrance. Like I think psytrance is a very broad genre, anywhere from the mainstream psytrance, which I find okay, up until high-tech psycore, whatever you want. So to me there's no such thing as real psytrance and non-real psytrance. Yeah, not modern Chesto, like original Chesto, Arjen van Buuren, Paul van Dijk, the old school even 2000s, but early 2010s. I believe I have a State of Trance CD somewhere in my parents' car, which is from 2013-ish. Do I have that in my playlist on Spotify? Did I find that? Yeah, this one. This is in my playlist. There's some really good music in here. Obviously, I cannot play any of it because then I'm going to get a strike. But it is the one that has Ping Pong on it, which is like a fairly famous Armin van Buuren track. Some of the other ones on here are very, very cool. I really like Kingdom of Dreams. This is a very good track. Anyway, next up we have Borboleta by Caprino. I'm assuming that's Italian, at least that is the way that I'm pronouncing it. If it isn't, then I'm sorry for the mispronunciation. But let's have a listen. Not really a fan of the very hard panning that is happening here. When you do panning like this, I would suggest against hard panning and doing maybe like 50-50 panning as opposed to 100% left, 100% right. Or maybe even 30-30. It's Portuguese. I'm sorry. I believe that trance was a short name for psytrance. No, the normal trance is definitely different. I guess you could call it euphoric trance if you really want to. But that is usually shortened to trance. I like this Captain Hook style kick and bass. You would need to clean it up though. We're bleeding into kick drums again. So you would LFO tool this. Honestly, with a sliding bass line, it's super easy. You just do this. Make sure that it fades out a little bit earlier and that this is in the last effect in the chain on your bass line, and that you don't do any crazy processing on the master or on your kick and bass group. In regards to phase shifts. If that doesn't tell you anything, go watch my ultimate guide to kick and bass and then it will. It will take you 3.5 hours of your life, but that's absolutely worth it. Also, your bass volume is very unstable. Do you see how every other part, this is very quiet and this is very loud? You probably want to compress it in a way that they are both equal, like somewhat equal loudness. You have some sounds that become very, very stereo, which is going to cancel strangely into mono. Kick is suddenly quieter. Yeah, the kick should be the loudest element, not the bass line. In this case, you can just do a simple waveform check and see that essentially the kick is gone entirely missing. It's like bleeding. It's like the bass line is bleeding all the way through it here. You're going to be losing a lot of extra kick punch from that. On top of all of the punch that this kick is already kind of missing. I would almost say that it's like the bassline is a little bit delayed. Like it's sliding in very late as well. I feel like the intro string has no use there because it's starts so strong, feels like it doesn't serve anything. There were a few things in the intro. The intro felt fairly disconnected. Like there were a few cool elements in the intro, but they weren't altogether working towards one story. The rest of the track does have that kind of cohesion though. Like they're all working to some kind of groove in some way. Not a fan of this changing trance gate thing that you're doing because everywhere it's misaligned with the beat. So I would just put like 16 note or an 8th note trance gate on top of that and call it a day. Nice little bass plug there. I like that. Remove the sub bass from the plug over here though. In the fill, leave it and then remove it over here. At least the sub bass part, because then again it's going to clash with your actual kick and bass. Yeah, I agree, the kick and bass is bleeding too much. Any form of bleeding in the kick and bass is too much in my books. But I think throughout the years I've made that opinion very, very clear. You again have a few elements that push the track into such a stereo amount that it's going to cancel mono. In this case, the average is not really representative of what is actually going on. Because there are some elements that are so wide that they're almost entirely going to cancel out into mono. I like this question and answer thing. Like a little softer lead and then the... Here you're... So this is what I mean with when you have tracks that together work to one idea, right? You have just this question and answer thing. In this case there's a sound on top that doesn't really work with that. Like that speeding up, slowing down effect. You need to be really careful if a sound that is like speeding up or slowing down like that doesn't actually disturb the main rhythm of your track. Which it almost always does if it is playing on top of something else. Like as a one shot it can sometimes work. It can work in the parts where it doesn't have a rhythm, like a breakdown. But more often than not it just distracts from your main rhythm. In some countries sidetracks may be more... maybe so much more popular than trance that they just say trance instead of psytrance. I think in Israel that would be the case, yeah. They just refer to it as trance. Maybe in Goa, maybe in Brazil as well. Like those are the places that I usually associate with like very big crowds for psytrance that are always there. I like this very watery synth that you have playing here. Not the wobbly one, but there was like a plug playing before. The one that goes tun tun. That one. Tun tun. I like that one very much. Got to go enjoy your birthday. Thank you. It's in 2 days, so I'll enjoy it for sure. I will be meeting with my parents. I'm not at my parents, but we have booked a little getaway for 3 days, so that's going to be nice. Anyone else use 136.1 Hz in their track? No. If that's one of those like alternative tunings, I personally don't subscribe to that thing. To the alternative tuning ideas. There's some very cool ideas in this track, but there's also some things that are like making the track not cohesive, and there's some like glaring mistakes, like the way that the kick and bass is bleeding. But also musically speaking, as I said, there's a few ideas in this track that don't really work together. And that is just something that happens if you're a beginner. As he said, this is his first track. For a first track, this is actually sounding very, very nice. Is there anything else that I should say? Not really. I guess I've gotten most of the points that I wanted to say. Even if you've been watching the stream with the other guy that submitted his first and second track, you're going to run into the same thing if you want to learn. You could purchase my masterclass, which is always a good resource. I recommend that to anyone. Because I explain, as I said, a whole production of mine, and you can see every single thing that I do. and it's edited. I explain everything, so it's a great way to learn. But the main thing that you need to learn is listening for like how other tracks sound versus your track, and that is just listening to a playlist full of your favorite music. As I've stated many times before, I have a psychedelic favorites playlist, which is just a big collection of a whole bunch of different music. You can get here to this playlist, by the way, through my Discord server as well. So you can go in my Discord server to the landing page, where you'll find my artist page for Spotify, which opens up like this. And then you just scroll down. Of course, add all of my music to your playlist if you're interested in that. And over here, it should say psychedelic favorites. And there you get my music, or the music that I actually listen to as reference material. And every day, you just listen to that for half an hour to an hour, and give it a year of doing that. Of course, you would also need to make sure that you have a somewhat professional system at least. Like at least monitors or fairly good speakers. This technique is not going to work on laptop speakers or like crappy headphones or AirPods or something like that. Either good headphones or good monitors. But after a year, you should start to just kind of intuitively write music in a way, not just mix-wise and like the I guess the overall balance of elements and the mix aspect of the track, but also just the musical ideas that you're going to get are going to be much more cohesive because you're listening to a lot of that, of the way that other people essentially write. Let's go here again. We have 2 more tracks here. Psychedelic Religion. Hello, would like to have some opinions on my track. Of course, that's what I'm here for. So let's have a listen. Very cool artwork. But as far as I know, it's more the 440 versus 432 Earth discussion. Everything I've heard about 432 has been pseudoscience, and I don't believe in pseudoscience. That's again another controversial thing to say inside the Psytrance community, because there's a lot of spirituality involved in that, and that is obviously closely linked to Psytrance. But I don't buy it. I am not a believer in that kind of stuff. I would need to see actual proof of those things that it makes my music better, and everything that I've heard in 432 has sounded worse than 440. Now I'm again going to focus on the music. Very nice tonality for the kick and bass. I like it a lot. Definitely needs to be resampled. As you can see over here, the transient is destroyed. We cannot see individual pockets for the basses over here either. That is what I'm looking for in the waveform. I'm not a fan of that very loud element being very strongly sidechained. Take this synth and play it later in the track, because now the vocal is playing and it needs to stand out. In fact, I would add more high frequencies to the vocal. A little bit of a loud atmosphere here. Some really cool ideas in here. I really like stuff like Ghost Flux. This track is suffering from what we heard a lot during this stream, and that there's a few synths that are just mixed too loud. Like this FM synth that we hear over here. That's just kind of pushing the waveform. That is in general just a good check that you can do. If you see your kick and bass at a certain level and at certain points where a particular synth is playing it just go up a little bit, that's probably a good indication of that element just being too loud. either in just overall loudness, like over here, these synths like actually overpower it. But what can also be the case is that you get loudness in terms of peak level, but not in actual loudness. Because peak level and actual loudness are two different things. Like the peak level is just the highest volume that it goes to in any single instant of time, and loudness is really determined over a longer period of time. And what can happen when you have peak loudness being too loud is that it hits the limiter too hard and it starts to distort the limiter. Your master limiter, that being. I like this part. Here we have nice separation of elements. We have not too much happening. If I want to do an acid line like that, I would probably link it in terms of rhythm to the bass line itself. I'm a real big fan of these kind of mystical melodies that a lot of people sometimes use, and this is a good example of that. Here again we have something that is just way too loud. It overtakes. When the kick is playing in the break, I'm personally not a fan of just playing the kick like this. I would completely remove it. But when it's playing in the break, make sure that it's quieter than the actual kick that is playing in the drop, like by 5 dB, so that when it starts to play in the drop again, you actually get some impact from it. This whole part where the kick and bass is should probably be removed. I would just no kick and bass in the breakdown, and just have the kick and bass come back in here so that it has maximum power.
And the DJ is the god.
Drunks, roustabouts.
Here again, as we're building up, lower that kick and bass volume so that you don't lose the impact when the drop actually hits. You want those people to start dancing. Sounds a bit strange that the acid line resets halfway through. I would probably have it rise up until the point where it was just at with that fill thing that you did there, and then remove the acid line completely so that these FM synths can come through. Right now you again have two synths that are kind of clashing together. And since we've been listening to this acid line for quite a while now, it's probably nicer to just have the FM synth coming through entirely. Also, that will give you a little bit more space between the old melodic idea, which was that acid line, and the one that you're playing now. This melodic idea should also stand out a little bit more. It should be a little bit louder, and therefore the other synths a little bit quieter, so that it really blasts, right? Right now it feels like you have this really strong sound that is playing this really strong melodic idea, and it's kind of sitting back a little bit. It's a little bit anxious, trying to maybe not pull too much focus, but when it comes to those elements, you want them to be big, you want them to be bold, you want them to say like, look at me, listen to me, this is where I'm at. You know what I mean? It's just mixed wrong for the type of element that it's trying to be. Yeah, the queue is closed, unfortunately, meaning that we're going to finish with this track. You can still just leave this track in here, Jointler. That is absolutely okay. Next Sunday we'll just start off from here. I always use this matches over here to see where I need to start playing the tracks. I think I did that today, right? Yeah, okay. So I did do that today. I wasn't sure if I actually checked for that, but I did. So next week I'll just start from here and your track will be at the beginning of the stream. Next up, we have Novice over here. I hope it's an improvement from previous ones I sent. This is the chant. Let's see. To be honest, I don't remember the last few tracks. Very mono vocal here. I would widen that up. Again, make sure that mystical vocal like that is big and not narrow, trying to stay in its shell, which it's currently doing. Bit strange to hear just the bass coming in here. The kick is way too quiet. We have a lot of bleeding between the kick and the bass, so we need to resample here. Here again, there's one of those synths that becomes way too loud. This is a ride that is way too loud, as you can hear. There's some really cool sound design going on here. It feels like one of the main synths that is playing in here doesn't really have a stable groove. It's really strange to hear an open hat being used as a snare. There's definitely still some very big issues with this track over here. I don't remember the last track, so I cannot say if it's an improvement or not. But again, I'll give the same feedback that I gave to the other two people that were, I guess, more beginner, more just starting out with Psytrance production. It is going to be slow. It's going to take you 100 projects to get to a point where you're going to be at a professional level. And that is if you're doing a lot of referencing, if you, as I said before many times, if you listen every day for half an hour to some music that you like, to some professionally mixed music, to some professionally written music. I say half an hour, I mean at least half an hour. When it comes to my mixing sessions, I generally go with an hour of listening before that. So on the day that I do mixing sessions in the morning when I wake up, I spend roughly an hour just listening to music. Of course, I'm doing other things. I'm writing emails and I'm writing maybe messages. Maybe I'm preparing uploads. Any work that doesn't involve any other audio, I can do that. But that is one of the ways that I'm just consistently training my ears and keeping my ears fresh. At this point, for me, I don't really need to train my ears anymore for what I should listen to. I've got that down pretty well. In the same way that Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't need to learn how to kick a ball, but every morning when he wakes up, he will do a few passes on a field kicking a ball. And the reason why that is because he wants to make sure that he maintains the level where he's at. But I feel like with your track and a few of the other people that were in here as well, they still need to get to that level of just being able to hear in a certain way. Because listening to music casually and listening to music to produce is a very different way of listening to music. I cannot listen to music casually anymore. I don't know if anybody else has this. For any of the more advanced producers in here in the chat, they may resonate with this. I can no longer sit down, put on some music and not analytically listen to that music anymore. I can no longer just enjoy the ideas of a song. My mind always goes to, hey, wait, this FM sound is made by doing this and that and that. Or, hey, the mix is a little bit off. Maybe that I would have personally taken the hats and made them a little bit louder. Or, I wonder what makes it so that this track is so well balanced. I wonder what plugin they use to get this particular reverb. I wonder what particular effect is on this vocal. I'm always kind of thinking like that. And that is the kind of analytical thinking that you need to do in a production, which simply doesn't happen when you're just casually listening to music, when you're just starting out. And that is it takes a few years to get to that point where not necessarily that you're just in that mindset, but that you're in that mindset and can listen so effectively that you can actually draw the right conclusions from that. That's the same when you study to movies. Not really when you're studying to movies or something like that. When you study to make movies. Yes, exactly. I've worked in a restaurant for 8 years, both serving and in kitchen. And anytime I sit down in a restaurant, I'll always think for a little moment to myself, hey, the waitress didn't do this, or when they're setting the table, they did this wrong, or the glass isn't polished. It's the same kind of thought, you know what I mean? If you're professional in something, if you're an expert in something, you look at things differently than when you're a beginner in something or when you're not involved into something. It's the same with movies. It's probably the same with people that make paintings. It's probably the same with people that play sports. Anybody that is a professional soccer player will watch a soccer game completely differently than like any normal person watching it, like any fan watching it. Like my father has played soccer for 40 years, and he can look at a game and talk to me about stuff like pressure and lines of attack and all kinds of weird terms that even though I played football for 4 years, I simply don't know about. But because he has 40 years of experience, he just kind of intuitively gets that. And it's the same for music. I see somebody else is trying to join the server to submit music. The queue has already closed for this week, but for next, you can still submit, which means that next Sunday I'll just listen to it, and you'll be the second one. If you're submitting now, you'll be the second one that will play in the stream next week, Benjamin. So technically the stream is now over, and I'm not doing any feedback anymore for today. But next Sunday I'll be back, of course, at the same time, 5 o'clock European time. The notification will, as always, go out. So make sure that you're subscribed and that you have like a bell notification. That way it will just show up for you. And then for the stream notification, you have to separately set the bell. Right? You have to separately get yourself notified. So a few hours before my usual stream time, maybe like 4 or 5 hours before my usual stream time, I post a notification of when the stream will be live. And there, in that notification, you can set a separate reminder. And then once the stream goes live, you just get a little pop-up. I believe if you don't set a reminder and you set a notification bell for everything, you'll still get a pop-up for streams. But I'm not entirely sure if that's still the case. Like I've also seen like some people get notification for shorts in some strange way. I've never personally seen that because I have a different Google account on my phone. So I'm basically just like a viewer, just like you guys. Like for me, on my PC, my account is like very special in relationship to my channel because it is my channel, right? So I cannot see on my PC. I don't get notifications on my PC when I upload a video because I'm uploading it from my PC kind of thing. But on my mobile phone, I'm essentially just like you guys, a normal viewer, because it's a different Google account for me. And I do get all of the stream notifications, but almost every week I also set the reminder in the stream pop-up thing. So if you want that, that is a sure way to make sure that you get the notification. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and I hope that you enjoyed the feedback. I'm gonna go now. It's been 3 hours, and I'm going to edit some more content for you guys. And then I'll see you guys